Our NFL insider Jonathan Jones joining us now. JJ, we heard Coach Harbaugh say it was 4 days ago that they were 1-5. They won 2 games in 4 days. Maybe your math might say 5 days. I don't really know how to do that counting. What I do know is that Lamar Jackson is back and that they look so much better now. And it feels like maybe now they're starting to hit those expectations that were set before the season began.
You know, Zach, it takes me back to Sunday school when, like, it was Good Friday, and then they told us it was 3 days, and then Sunday, and I was like, I don't know how we got 3 days out of it, but, you know, and so, yes, 4 or 5 days, whatever it is, you know, Harbaugh makes a great point here, and that is that, you know, there are only 2 games under 500, and, you know, they're trying to keep the focus on that, right? They're trying to just go 1-0 every single week. But the point is, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your friends. And in this case, you have to outrun the AFC North, right? So it's not about them getting 4 games above 500 or 5 games above 500, right? It's not about them necessarily winning out. It's just about them being better than the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of the year, because that's frankly their only competition in the AFC North. And what I saw last night from this Baltimore Ravens team was a defense that did not show the same sort of holes that it had shown in early October against the Houston Texans. The week before that against the Kansas City Chiefs. I saw a defense that they made the trade for Eli Gelman. That worked out. They need pass rush. We'll get to that a little bit later, but we see right here the AFC North standings. You know, they're right there in the thick of it. The fact is they don't play the Pittsburgh Steelers until week 14 and week 18. The fact is they still have not played the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, as crazy as it sounds, right, the Baltimore Ravens, they have games that they can lose on this schedule. Those are just the games that they can't lose. Okay, so that week 13 against the Bengals, which of course is preceded by a game against the Jets, which is preceded by a game against the Browns. You're liking that if you are the Ravens, but really their season is more or less going to be won and lost between weeks 13 and weeks 15 when they have those AFC North battles against the Bengals and the Steelers. And so last night, again, seeing that defense flying around, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton is such a surefire first team All-Pro so long as he stays healthy. That's one of the easier marks on my ballot each year. And then offensively, what you saw was the return of Derrick Henry, number one. But number two, you saw a healthy and happy Lamar Jackson, someone who did not have to rush. At the end of the day, the stat book's going to say that he had 5 rushes. He really had 2 rushes. Then he had 1 scramble and 2 kneel downs there at the end of the game in garbage time. So the Ravens know what they have in Lamar. They're protecting him, and they're winning easily while doing so.
Yeah, Derrick Henry running for 119 yards on 19 carries, so finally getting back into his bag. And to take it a little bit further with the Ravens where everything stands, because obviously you don't want to be 2 games under 500, but Vegas has stayed solid all the way through of liking Baltimore to end up winning the division, despite the Steelers being right there at the top. Steelers at plus 200. The Ravens minus 145. How much of the situation, and of course, as you laid out that you have to wait till weeks 13 and beyond to really figure things out, does it feel like to you that this is the Ravens' division to take?
Boy, that's hard to say just because, you know, the Steelers can ebb and flow, right? I think because the last couple of years we've been used to a Steelers collapse that maybe people feel is happening a little bit early. I don't feel that way. I think that they had a bad loss against the Bengals, right? If they win that game, we're talking about the Steelers in a much different way from 2 weeks ago, where they should not have lost to Joe Flacco and that group. And so and look, everyone is entitled to a bad loss. At the end of this season, there's going to be teams that just had that loss. That one game was like, we shouldn't have lost that one. If that one can be the Steelers game, then okay. They got beat by a better Packers team last week, right? And then the Packers ran away with it in the second half. But you continue down the schedule, you know, we are about to find out truly about the Steelers because they have the Colts this week, because they have the Chargers coming up after that, because they get into the meat of the AFC North schedule. And so, again, the Ravens truly don't need any help. They just have to take care of business in the AFC North if things play out the way that we expect them to. But even if the Ravens, take some losses along the way, there look to be some L's on the ledger coming up in short order for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, when we get to December ball, that is going to determine this division, which frankly, we say that every year, but looking at the schedule, looking at the odds, looking at these teams week in, week out, that's exactly what this is going to come down to.
You mentioned help and the Ravens maybe not needing any help, but what about help in the form of getting some new players there onto the roster? Trade deadline next week. Could you see Baltimore making any sort of deal to shore up whatever weaknesses they might think they have?
1,000%, Zach. 1,000%. And they are comforted by the fact that they've already played and they know what they are going into the trade deadline. It's Tuesday, November 4th. They are not going to play any more games until then, of course, right? And so they have all weekend to scour the NFL, to make some phone calls with teams and say, hey, depending on what happens this week with you guys, why don't we maybe set something up? Look, here's the one position we have been talking about for weeks. It's edge rusher. And I know a lot of folks, when they traded for Alohi Gelman and they sent away Odafe Owe, folks said they don't have edge rushers to send away. The fact of the matter was the Ravens knew that they didn't really have a future anymore with Owe and that they needed help in the defensive backfield, at least in the short term, while they were trying to get healthy. We saw that trade paid off last night. And so they are going to continue to look for edge rusher help. Perhaps even they found and played against their next edge rusher. The Miami Dolphins, of course, everyone expects them to be sellers at the trade deadline, especially as it relates to edge rusher. They have Jalen Phillips, they have Bradley Chubb, the latter of whom more likely to be dealt than the former. So is it possible that he winds up in Baltimore? Sure. Is it possible he winds up at 10 to a dozen other teams that need edge rush help? Yes. And the Dolphins, by waiting for as long as they have, perhaps in theory they could get the maximum amount of value possible for these guys. But I fully expect the Baltimore Ravens to be in the market for some defensive help, specifically pass rusher. And frankly, Zach, I would be surprised if at 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, you and I or someone else here at our fantastic company are talking, and we are not talking about the Baltimore Ravens having made a move.
You alluded to the fact that the Ravens have extra time where they can sit back since they played last night to see how the whole weekend plays out. Those other teams that will play this Sunday and into Monday, how could these games and how will these games, you think, affect trade deadline movement that we see? Got about a minute left here.
Oh, boy. Well, then I won't get on my soapbox about how one game shouldn't actually sway what a team really and truly believes about a certain player and about their future. Right? Because every game matters the same, except the game right before the trade deadline, because that's when teams make a whole bunch of large decisions about their future. Never mind that. There aren't that many sellers in the NFC, right? You have the Saints, who have been stubborn to send anyone away. The Giants apparently don't want to send anyone away. And the Arizona Cardinals are fighting for their lives over there. Those are the bottom three teams in the NFC. So don't see a ton of action over there. Way more buyers than sellers in the NFC. Meanwhile, in the AFC, the Tennessee Titans, basically anybody outside of Jeffrey Simmons can be had. Look for Arden Key to potentially be on the move there. The Jets. I don't think Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher, is going anywhere. If Breece Hall goes somewhere, it is because the Jets got a ransom for him. They seem content on keeping him. Miami, we just talked about them. Cleveland, don't know if they're going to make any move outside of someone like David Njoku, for example. And the Las Vegas Raiders, to round it out, they could always part ways with Jacoby Myers if someone is willing to send them over a fourth or so round pick for him. So those are the teams that will be potentially selling. And anyone that I didn't mention, you can go ahead and consider them buying.
JJ, rest up. Trade deadline's coming up. We can count the days if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'm going to say 4 days until the NFL trade deadline and not 5. JJ, appreciate it. And, of course, coming up this weekend, NFL Today will be on the road, headed over to Buffalo to check out the Chiefs and the Bills, who will be playing. And then on November 16th, they'll be on the road again. So check out NFL Today lead up to that 1 o'clock games on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.